So thanks for being a part of this recording. Like I said, this is the first time we're recording this training as part of the series with the new changes that have taken place as a result of that NAR settlement. So we're going to be talking about working with buyers today. So let me share my screen with you. And we're going to start out with, well, I guess I should start with an introduction. I'm Eric Lee. I'm the principal broker for the state of Utah, and happy to be able to come to you with this training today. If you have questions, comments, feedback, or things that you'd like to see other trainings on, you can email me directly at brokerericlee@gmail.com. If it's things that I feel like I should incorporate into a part of this series, then I'll make changes to this series. Otherwise, I can make little changes or update videos for you that I think would be relevant to a lot of agents. And I post those on my YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube and subscribe to the Elite Agent Training channel, then you'll have access to all the little changes that I make here. And then, of course, I do realize that a lot of part of this series here, that we're limited in the content we can provide in an hour. And so quite a few agents will go to eliteagenttraining.com and sign up for the full training program. And that's completely up to you. It's something that I require for every brand new agent, because with the world the way that it is, the litigious nature of people, especially with all of these changes going through, being in this business and not being well trained is an incredible risk, not just for the agent, but for the brokerage as well. So anyways, I commend you guys that are on with me today for being a part of this training program and for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here. All right, today, like I said, we're going to be talking about working with buyers, but every week we assign homework. And last week we talked about working with sellers. So just as a homework follow-up and accountability for yourself, hopefully you're able to go through, make sure that you've got a listing presentation, that it's all ready to deliver, that you can deliver it in 40 minutes or less, and get all your files organized so you're not, your desk isn't covered with paperwork and real messy. All right. So today we're going to start out with a deep thought from, and I love this because it's 400 years old. He who stops being better stops being good. Oliver Cromwell said that a long time ago. And we have a chance with, not only with this training, but with these changes that are here as a result of the NAR settlement and all the forms changes and everything, we have a chance to be better than we were before. So hopefully you guys are seizing that, and rather than having this change be super scary or even drive you out of business, as some agents were wont to do, hopefully these changes can actually increase your business and increase your professionalism. So some of the resources that you have available to you, we provide our agents full buyer's packets. So if you're a brand new agent and you go into equity, there's a checklist in, some states don't use .loop, most do, but in .loop, there's a buyer's packet, there's a checklist with everything that you need in there. The buyer's presentation that I'm going to do in this role play today is also available for you. If you go to Elevate, in the top left corner, there's a training drop-down menu. Go down to Elite Agent Training, and you have access to the buyer presentation that I'm going to share with you today. I've made a few changes for today's that'll be a part of this recording that I haven't gotten uploaded there yet. So I would encourage you, if you do download that you make some tweaks according to the changes as a result of this settlement. And then, of course, as I mentioned, you've got .loop and you've got some task plans. Now, task plans, that's a separate training that I do on your systems, but you do, if you are working with a buyer or a seller, in that same Elite Agent Training tab, I've got a list of tasks that you would perform for each buyer that you have when the buyer goes active, when they go under contract. Same thing with sellers. So you've got those resources there to help you know how to better serve a client. So I want to start out today's training with this definition of fiduciary duty. And it's the responsibility of an agent toward the principal involving trust, loyalty, confidence, care, and diligence. Some of you may remember that from when you took your real estate test, those 5 things: trust, loyalty, confidence, care, and diligence. Those are outlined in state law as well. It's defined there. But to sum it up really simply, your client's interests come before yours, but not to the point where we sacrifice honesty. So if our client's interests were to deceive or defraud somebody, we don't do that. We don't cross that line. So our job is to put our client's interests first, to not disclose things that would harm their position, unless, of course, it's like a material fact that must be disclosed. And that does come up with buyers primarily in their ability to perform. So, for example, if one of the common ways that fiduciary duty comes up, and we talk about this in other trainings, as far as this, trust, loyalty, confidence goes. For example, if I say that I'm going to be collecting my earnest money, right? The contract says we've got to collect it, but we haven't collected it. Then I need to, by day 4 or whatever the contract defines, right? If the contract defines it should have been collected by day 4, if we haven't, then that's now a material fact that I have to disclose. So I can't keep that in confidence because it is a material fact of the transaction. So anyways, there are some material things, but we never sacrifice our honesty in the pursuit of our fiduciary duty. All right. So let's talk about, and by the way, none of this training this aspect of the training has changed. I've been teaching this for over 20 years, and you'll notice that the settlement agreement is now enforcing what I've been training forever. But if you've been with me for a while, none of this should be a shock to you. This should be the way that we have all been doing business for a long time. And it wasn't. And unfortunately, because it wasn't for a lot of areas, that lawsuit got more traction than I think it should have. And again, that's had a lot of unfortunate consequences. So let's talk about what our fiduciary duty how it's actually applied to this real estate business. Okay. One of the reasons we get people pre-qualified before we show them homes, and whenever I ask a group of agents this question, one of the most common responses I get is so that we don't waste our time, right? We'll get them pre-qualified so that we don't waste our time. But again, if I go back here to this and our client's interests come before ours, then why should that be about us and getting them pre-qualified first? So I'm going to open it up to you guys. Why, if we're keeping our fiduciary duty foremost in our mind, why do we get a client pre-qualified before we show them homes? Yeah, Cindy.
I do it because we don't want to waste their time either. I have shown homes to clients before I pre-qualified them. This was a long time ago, Eric, but we were looking at homes that were way over their price range because that's what they thought they could do. And then it is so discouraging for them when they have to go look at homes in their price range when they've looked at the ones that they really can't afford.
You're so right. In fact, if we take ourselves out of the equation and we say, hey, this isn't about me, then this is a corner that we can't cut. Sometimes if it is about us, if it's about me wasting my time, for example, would I show my mom homes before getting her pre-qualified? Some of us may say yes. But when we remember that we're putting our clients first, and by the way, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because fiduciary duty is most often violated with the people that we're closest to, with friends and family. And this is an example of it. There's a lot of people that don't get their mom or their best friend pre-qualified before they show them homes, right? Because they've made it about them and they're willing to waste time for their best friend or for their mom. But if they had made it about their mom or their best friend, if they had truly put their client's interest first, even though their client is a friend or a family member, if they had truly put their interests first, then they wouldn't cut this corner. Because just like Cindy said, you're not doing any favors to them when you show them homes before they get pre-qualified. You're actively harming them. They may be showing homes, like Cindy mentioned, that are outside of their price range. And then when they start shopping within their price range, they're very discouraged. It becomes an almost impossible task to get them excited about something that's $50,000 or $100,000 less than what they thought they could get than other homes that they had seen. It's very difficult. So you haven't made their life easy. If you, for example, even went under contract on one, they got all excited and told their friends about it, and then later on found out that they couldn't qualify for it. Now they're embarrassed and humiliated, and you're not doing them any favors. So when we talk about getting them pre-qualified before we show them homes, this is in their best interest. It's not about you. And it doesn't matter who it is that you're working with. We don't cut this corner just because we love them. In fact, we don't cut this corner because we love them, right? We understand that this is about them. Cindy, you still had your hand up. Did you have another?
Yeah, it's also really rude to the sellers who might have to put a lot of effort into getting their home ready. And, you know, we're looking at for our client's best interest, but we're also supposed to look at for the public's best interest too.
Yeah, and in this case, with fiduciary duty, we're not considering the public's best interest. We are just considering ours. But you're right, it is bad form as a real estate agent, you know, and it's rude and you get a reputation that's bad for you. But even if we take you out of the equation as an agent and we just put our client first, we don't cut this corner. And that's what I want to do. So you're right, Cindy, it's best practices for lots of different reasons, but it's a legal requirement. If we really understand our fiduciary duty, we put our clients first and we get them pre-qualified before we show them homes. Now, signing an exclusive buyer broker agreement before we show them homes. Again, I've been training on this for a long time. Now it's required because of this settlement agreement with NAR, right? But how is this in our client's best interest? And I saw so many agents pushing back, almost revolting when this settlement agreement came out, saying, why should we have to do this? We should be able to date before we get married. Let's go see a few homes together to see if we like each other. And that argument falls flat with me every time, because to put it simply, you would never do that if the coin were flipped. And the other side of the coin is with listings. Nobody would ever go out and say, let me just list your home for a few weeks and let's see how it works. Let's see if we get along. I'll do all of this work for free. It sounds ludicrous. It sounds absurd when we put it in the term of working with sellers. So why is it so absurd when we say this with buyers? And the answer is it's not. And this settlement agreement has come down and said, no, everybody should have been doing this, and it would have solved a lot of problems, because it is in the buyer's best interest to know how agents are compensated. And that's covered here. It is in the buyer's best interest to know what they're obligated to. It is in their best interest to know what the agent is going to be doing for them. Okay. All of these things are in the buyer's best interest, and they should know this right up front. And they should know exactly how much compensation they might be responsible for. All of this needs to be right up front. And because of the NAR settlement, now it must be up front. It's required to be. All right. So we've been teaching this for a long, long time. Now it's required. Hopefully everybody on here is fully on board with that, and you understand that it is and always has been in the client's best interest to have this done right up front. Now, again, I'm going to go back to some of the trainings that I've done, other videos I've done. If you don't understand how to explain this, if you don't understand that you need a firm number in there, like you need to have a fixed percentage or dollar amount that the person is responsible for as a part of the service, I've got other videos that talk about that. You can't do a range. You can't leave it blank. You can't put in 1% in your buyer agency agreement, and later on, if you find out a seller is offering 3%, you can't go and increase the amount that you're compensated to 3%. All right. So if you don't understand the background of those things, I have separate videos that talk about it. That's all on that YouTube channel for Elite Agent Training. Make sure you go in and watch those. All right. And it's in the playlist for the Utah Forms updates, but the concept would apply to any state with those questions in particular. Another thing that we do with our fiduciary duty is we make sure that our clients have copies of everything. The easiest way to do that, if you're using dotloop, is to just make sure that it's shared with them. So for example, for me, when I go out and meet with a new buyer, I like to take paper. I think people do a better job of understanding things when they have paper in front of them rather than skipping through and looking for a signature on an electronic, like an iPad or something like that. So with me, I'll take out a paper form of the contract and we sign it. And the minute I go home, I tell my clients this, I say, rather than you in the process of buying a home, you're going to lose all your paperwork. You lose half your stuff because it's packed away in some random box in the garage. You want access to these things. So I encourage them to, in their email, set up a folder for all documents related to real estate. And then when they sign this, I scan it in and I email it to them and they have it saved in their folder, in their email program. And then it's super simple for them to refer back to those things. And it's the nice thing for me is I can prove that that's been done. And this is actually a legal requirement that we voluntarily furnish copies of all contracts to our clients. And so we have to be able to document that we've done that. And if I give them a paper copy, it's almost impossible for me to document that I gave them a paper copy, right? So I like to use dotloop as protection for this. Once we've done these things, now we start looking for or developing a list of what they want in a home. And a lot of agents get this backwards. In fact, most buyer's agents would, prior to this, I'm not sure how it's all filtering out now, because my agents have all been trained on this for a long time, but it used to be the norm that if you were a buyer and you're talking to your buddy and they say, yeah, we're thinking about buying a home, you say, oh, hey, that's awesome. What are you looking for? And they make notes, right? They pull out their phone, they make notes of what they're looking for, and they say, let me set you up on some, hot sheets, or let me send you some listings and see if you like any of them. And I still think a lot of agents are probably approaching it that way. And then before they actually go out and show any of the listings, they should have a buyer agency agreement in place. But I would encourage you, rather than, go ahead and take the notes, have the conversation with them. And they say, hey, yeah, we're thinking of buying a home. Oh, that's great. That's exciting. Tell me what it is you're looking for. What areas are you moving to? It's a natural part of the conversation, right? And you're free to take notes on that. But rather than going back and setting them up on hot sheets at that point, because you haven't gotten them pre-qualified. So the stuff that you're sending them, they may not qualify for, and you're setting them up for frustration, right? They don't know how you work. And so there was some studies done years ago that showed that obviously for a number of years, where buyers first see information on a home is online, right? They're getting it on the internet. And it was like 95% of buyers first see a home on the internet. What was fascinating to me was that when buyers wanted to see a home, it was nearly 85% of them were calling the number on the sign. And so you step back a little bit and you say, how did that happen? How is it that they're seeing everything online, but they're calling the name on the sign? It's because nobody was communicating to them what the buyer agent actually did for them. So all these buyer's agents are sending out hot sheets to their prospective buyers. And I say prospective because they hadn't met with them. They hadn't done a buyer presentation. So the buyers didn't understand any of the value or the service that the buyer's agents actually performed. They simply got a list of homes. And then rather than bother their friend, the real estate agent that sent them all this stuff, because they don't know how their friend gets compensated, they really think of it as, well, I don't want to bother you because I don't know if I'm serious yet. But hey, wouldn't it be fun if for a date we go and grab some dinner and then just drive around and look at all these homes that our friend Eric, the realtor, sent us, right? So that's what they do. And they drive around. If they see a home, they say, you know what, this is everything we've been looking for. We love the yard. We love the neighborhood. We'd like to get in and see the home. Again, they don't think, let's bother Eric. Let's call Eric up. They think, we just want to see the home to see if we like it. And so they call the name on the sign. So the agents that have things backwards, that are finding out details of what a client wants in a home or prospective client wants in a home, and then emailing those lists, they're actively driving their prospective clients into the arms of the listing agents. And that listing agent, of course, answers the phone and says, "Hi, yeah, how can I help you?" And they say, "We saw this home, we're out in front of it, we'd like to see it if possible." That listing agent is a good listing agent, and he or she says, "Fantastic, let me ask you first, do you have a buyer's agent?" And they say, "Well, we've got a friend that sent us some stuff." And he asks further, "Have you signed any commitment with them?" And they say, "No." "Fantastic, I'd love to show you the home." Now, again, to be clear, under the terms of the settlement agreement, a listing agent does not have to have an agency agreement in place to show his own listing. That's part of his fiduciary duty to the seller. So he can say, "Sure, come on out, I'll show you the home." And then he goes out and he shows them the home. And since they don't have an agency agreement with you, the buyer's agent, in place, he says, "You know what? If you guys are interested in making an offer on this home, I can," and I've seen everything as low as $50, $500, $50, 1% off, whatever. "I can get you a substantial discount if you don't have an agent." And again, in one case, it was as low as $50. And the would-be buyer's agent, which was one of mine, called me up so upset at his friends. He's like, "I've known these guys for nearly a decade, and they sold me down the river for $50. And I am a big fan of the twisted Spider-Man saying, you know how he says, with great power comes great responsibility. I always flip that and say, with great responsibility comes great power. You need to own this." And in this case, what you're owning is you communicated less than $50 of value to your friends. They saw your value as nearly nothing of what you had communicated. And this is where we have an opportunity to be better. So this leads us into our next step of doing a buyer presentation. And I want to step into a role play of that. So let me do a new share, and we're going to jump right into the buyer presentation role play. Let me find it. All right. You see the home buying packet on the screen? Give me a thumbs up if you do. Got it? Okay. Thank you. So here's the role play. I'm gonna step into role play mode as if you guys were the prospective clients and I'm the agent, right? And I've put this into this format because for me, I do have an iPad and I like being able to just carry that around with me. I don't have to print out a new packet. The packet that I've provided you guys, I believe it's a PDF because it's just easier for you guys to use, but you could very easily take the content in the PDF and put it into a slideshow if you wanted to do the same thing. But for me, I've got this home buying packet. It's all ready to go. At a moment's notice, I just pick up my iPad and go, and we can have a buyer presentation on the fly, right? So I'll pick Brady. I see Brady's name on here. So Brady, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me. I'm excited to work with you as in helping you find your home. This is a really exciting process. One of the things that I like to do with people right up front is just sit down with them and go through the entire process with them, because this, for most people, is the largest transaction of their lives. We're playing with several hundred thousands of dollars, and making a mistake in this business could easily cost several thousand. And because it's such a big purchase and it happens so rarely, sometimes people accept that, these big losses. But if you were to lose your wallet today and you had a couple $1,000s in it, that would be a really crappy day, right? I mean, that'd be a horrible, unfortunate circumstance, and it puts you in a bad mood for a long time. When it comes to buying a home, people make mistakes all the time worth multiple thousands of dollars. And sometimes they're not even aware that they made the mistake. And so educating people is very important about this whole process so that you can move forward knowing where you're protected, how you're protected, who it is that's protecting you. And that allows you to make decisions with confidence, because this is a big deal. And when you find your dream home, you don't want to delay on it. You want to move on it quickly so that somebody else doesn't come in and get it. And able to move on it quickly, you need to not have any fear associated with all of the unknowns. So we're going to remove some unknowns for you today. So thanks for taking this time to work with me. The first thing that I want to talk about is that buying a home in the 21st century, I don't know, call me old fashioned, but the olden days where you just could take people's word on things, kind of sad that those are gone, right? But here in Utah, actually, we have a law that says when it comes to real estate, everything has to be in writing. And that's actually my number one job. Most people don't know that about real estate agents. They see us as the person driving them around, getting them into homes, doing showings and things like that. That's the visible portion of it. But the truth is that my job primarily, and most of the training, and we're talking hundreds, if not thousands of hours of training on the different forms and legal contracts that are available to help solve the individual problems that everybody has when it comes to buying a home and protecting the consumer along those lines. That's my primary role, is taking care of you in that regard. So as we get into this process, I want to talk about why people buy a home. And I do this for one simple reason, because sometimes it can be scary. Sometimes it can be frustrating. You get outbid on different homes. But when people have been surveyed why they purchase a home, the number one reason is freedom. They have their own place. They can do whatever they want to it. And even better, they get payback on the things on the improvements that they make to that home. There's a different lifestyle when you live in a home surrounded by other homeowners, right? It's different than renters, where people don't necessarily care about each other because everybody's transitory. When you live in a homeowning neighborhood, people tend to be kinder to each other. It's just a different lifestyle. You have a chance to build up equity. You're keeping up with inflation because your home appreciates over time. In fact, it's such a good investment vehicle that many people use it for retirement purposes. They'll not just buy their primary home, they'll buy a couple of other homes as well. So if this process gets challenging to us, if we do get beat out in a couple of offers, if we find a home that we love and an inspection turns out bad or whatever, I want you to remember that the end goal is worth the fight, right? We don't give up on this. And I'm here to help you through all of those challenges. One of the first things that we want to understand are the agency relationships that are involved. Now, there's a listing agent. That's the person representing the seller, and they're looking out for the seller's best interest. They're trying to negotiate the highest price for the seller, and they're trying to have contract language that benefits the seller, right? Now, a lot of people that don't realize this, they'll contact a listing agent directly. Like, say that you're driving around and you see a home that you love and you just want to check it out, right? So if you contact the listing agent directly, you run the risk of working with somebody and not having anybody look out for your own interests. That's where I come in. Okay. So if I'm your agent, a buyer's agent, now you've got somebody helping you with the contract language in your favor. A big part of that is making sure that deadlines work out for you, that we're negotiating the best price. All of these things I'm doing for you. Now, it is possible, at least in Utah, it's one of the states that allows for limited agency. Now, limited is basically saying that, so there's this concept of fiduciary duty that says everything I know, that can help you make a good decision, right? But in Utah, it's possible for, if you called up the listing agent without having your own agent, that listing agent could also be representing you. And so, for example, he would be limited if you said, for example, to the listing agent, what do you think a good offer price would be? The listing agent, if he says anything other than full price, he has violated his fiduciary duty to the seller, right? Because he's also representing them. And so he's limited because he can't disclose information that could potentially harm the other party that he's also representing. And so I recommend in almost every circumstance that you have your own buyer's agent that's independent, that isn't also representing the seller. Because then you can say, hey, what price do you think we should offer? And there's a lot of other things that buyer's agent can then do. He can run we call it running comps. He's checking for what other homes have sold for recently to see if this really is a good offer price. But he's negotiating more aggressively on your behalf. And again, we're talking multiple thousands of dollars here that you can save by having your own agent. So the question is, okay, having my own agent makes total sense. How much is it going to cost me? How is this paid? Now, there's a couple of different ways it can be paid. I've seen some people, and this is very rare, where the buyer agent commission can be paid by the buyer directly. And maybe that makes their offer stronger, right? And so maybe they're in a competing offer situation. So there are some negotiation scenarios where they would say, hey, look, I'm going to pay my own agent. But the vast majority of times, the buyer agent is compensated by the seller. So how does that happen? Well, as I put it down in here, our purchase contract itself has a place when we make when we find a home that we love, we make an offer to purchase that home from the sellers. There's a spot right in that offer form, and this is a standardized state form. There's a section in there that says we're asking the seller to pay the cost of the buyer agent commission, right? And sellers are aware that buyers have closing costs and down payments. They've got other fees that they need to cover. And so in order to facilitate this transaction, the sellers are willing to compensate for that buyer agent commission, right? And so if you go in thinking, hey, I'm saving money by not having an agent, not only do you not have representation, you're risking thousands of dollars when it comes to the negotiation, but you can also easily lose the home because you're going to run into challenges with understanding paperwork. You're going to run into challenges when it comes time to do inspections, finding the right inspectors, finding people that do a good job. Because if you're just looking through Yellow Pages, it's a flip of the coin. Do you get somebody good or not? There's a lot that goes into what a buyer's agent does for you. And again, we can almost always negotiate the cost of a buyer's agent in the purchase contract itself to be covered by the sellers. So let's talk more in detail about what I will do for you as your agent. First of all, connecting you with the right person can be worth thousands of dollars. So I've got lenders that I've worked with for over 2 decades. And it's important for you to understand, I don't get any kickbacks from anybody that I refer to you. In many cases, like the cases of a lender, that would be illegal. Okay. I don't get kickbacks by referring these people to you. What I get is a smooth transaction. What you get is low closing costs. You get a lender that's responsive to you, because we know that you're going to buy a home. Statistically, you buy a home every 4 or 5 years. Okay. However, so that's one deal. You represent one deal to that lender every 5 years. I represent multiple deals to that lender every month. So if that lender isn't taking great care of me and my clients, they put a cash flow at significant risk that they have, right? If we're just pulling some random lender off the internet that you're never going to see again, they're not as loyal to you. And I hope that makes sense to you. So having a lender that is not willing to risk multiple transactions a month means that they're going to be responsive, they're going to meet their deadlines. And when you get a lender that isn't, it can be a nightmare scenario. So that can save you thousands of dollars with the right lender. Same thing with an inspector. In fact, in Utah, to be an inspector, you go down, you buy a business license. You don't have to have the right tools. You don't have to have any form of accreditation. It's crazy. You can just, hey, I'm an inspector now, right? And so inspectors, knowing some that do good jobs, that provide good detailed reports, the ones that are willing to, that have all the tools, the infrared scanners and things like that. It's very important. It can save you thousands of dollars in catching defects in a home that otherwise might be hidden. So connecting you to these people is one of the key things that I can do for you. One of the other things is providing you immediate access to new listings. Most people, when they're buying a home, you guys probably included, it's exciting, right? You're on the internet, you're looking for things. But when a new listing pops up, are you on the internet every single day, right? Or is it, hey, you miss a couple of days because things get busy. Maybe you're just looking on the weekends. If there's a fantastic listing, you want that to be brought to your attention immediately. And that's one of the things that I can do for you. The other thing is that you need to understand is that you're not restricted in any way by having an agent. I can show you all available listings. We find it somewhere on the internet. It can be a for sale by owner. It can be open houses, builders. They all are not only willing to work with real estate agents. In most cases, they're happy to, because it means a smoother transaction for them, right? For sale by owners are the ones that I have to go in and negotiate with and educate. But usually after I educate them, they're pretty happy to work with a real estate agent as well, because they admittedly don't know what they're doing when it comes to paperwork either. And having somebody that can handle that appropriately benefits both sides. So you're not restricted in any way by having an agent. And then, as I mentioned before, one of the values that I provide is if we want to make an offer on a property, I can do a market evaluation where we look at similar homes that have sold in the last 6 months, similar to what an appraiser would do. But an appraiser charges around $500 and up for that service. You don't want to do that every time you're considering making an offer on a home, right? So I can do this similar service for you, and you can have this information and be armed with that coming into when we make the offer. So our offers are competitive, and this can potentially save us multiple thousands of dollars right here as well with that. And then of course, as I mentioned earlier, the contracts are the key thing that I bring to the table, and I'm aiding in contract negotiations in your favor, making sure that all the language, the deadlines, everything are appropriate to your specific situation. And I'm there with you through the entire process up through closing. I review the closing documents, making sure that they accurately reflect everything that we've negotiated for in the contract. I make sure that the lender and the title company have full copies of everything so that they can accurately prepare things. And then I'm there with you at closing to answer any questions, because again, it can be a little bit scary to sign these big packets of information when you're closing on a home. So I'm there with you through the whole thing. Let's talk really quickly about making an offer. So when we go out searching and finding a home, with the offer process, it is a legal binding contract, right? And there are standard forms that we're required to use that have been vetted with lots of attorneys, right? Through hundreds of thousands of transactions, over the years, right? What we don't ever want to do is go online. And sometimes, again, people that don't have an agent, they don't know any better. They go online and they Google a form. That's not the right way to do it, right? So I'll provide you with all the contracts there, and I'll assist you with every step of the process. One of the first steps is earnest money. Typically $1,000 to $5,000. This can vary depending on the home size. If we're looking at multi-million-dollar homes, obviously we're collecting more earnest money, but we hold this earnest money typically in a third party, usually the title company. We hold it in their account while we have time to go do an inspection. We can have our friends and family go through it, make sure everybody, that it kind of clears the family test too, right? So it clears inspection. We have a chance to make sure that our loan comes through. So we have our earnest money that tells the seller, yes, we're serious buyers, and we have that set aside. But it doesn't mean that we put it at risk. In fact, in the contract, I put deadlines and say, we're going to do all of our inspections by this time. And if we find something prior to that date that we don't like, then we try to negotiate to have those things fixed. If the sellers aren't willing or able to fix those things, then we can cancel the contract and get this earnest money back with no penalty to you whatsoever. And this is important for you to know, because again, if we find a home that we love, we want to be able to make an offer on it right away. We don't want to say, well, let's get all this information first and let's have mom and dad come through it first to see if we really like it. We, in many cases, don't have time for that before we make the offer, because somebody else could come in and make an offer while we're doing all of this research. And it's important for you to know that in the contract itself, there is a time period built in for that research. So you have time to do that with full protection of everything. All right. One of those things is inspections. And I've mentioned inspectors already, but we have the guys that are willing to go down into the crawl spaces and get up on the roof. And they've got, again, infrared tools that can show us where there may be active leaks behind walls, things like that, right? So we're getting, they test every appliance, they check the windows, they test every outlet. We're getting a very detailed report when we buy a home, so that when we go into it, we go in with eyes wide open, knowing exactly that we're getting. And then another thing that I can do is I can usually negotiate for a home warranty that covers all the major items, the heating, plumbing, electric, and cooling systems for the first year. And that's nice because, you know, if you moved in and a couple months later the furnace went out and you're looking at a potential $10,000 repair, that's a big hit, right? In your first year. So we can offset that by negotiating for that home warranty. So that's worth multiple thousands of dollars to you as well. So behind the scenes, there's also a lot of other people working. One of those is the title company. We've mentioned them before. They hold your earnest money, but what their real job, title is a term for ownership. So they're researching ownership on the home to make sure that nobody else could have a claim that affects your ownership, right? So for example, if we're buying a home that's been recently remodeled, they're going to make sure that there aren't any claims on the home or pending claims for the people that did the work, right? Making sure all those contractors got paid. And if a claim does come up after you buy the home, then they provide us title insurance that protects you, right? And it is able to pay off those claims, and then they pursue the sellers for those types of things. So title company is doing a lot of this research in the background. And they do this, I say, at no cost to you. It is a closing cost that happens later, only if you close on the home. If you don't close on the home, then they don't charge us anything, right? And we've got the home inspector that's coming in, and he's doing that detailed walkthrough, and we'll get to walk through with him after he does his inspection, and he'll point everything out to us and give us a full report on everything. Then there's the appraiser and the lender and the underwriter. And the lender is going to be gathering a whole bunch of information, putting it together, submitting that to the underwriter. The lender's ordering the appraisal, where, you know, goes out and says to the bank that this home has this much value and it's a good risk for you to lend them this money. All of these things are being done in the background that you don't necessarily see, but I do. And so one of my jobs is to coordinate with all of these people on a daily or weekly basis, making sure that they're doing their job and that they're getting their job done on time. And that's what protects your earnest money. Okay. So let's talk about the loan process a little bit more in detail. One of the first things that I'll have you do, if we haven't already, is we're going to get you pre-qualified, right? Now, folks, as an aside to the role play here, I don't have people get pre-qualified before I meet with them. I always try to meet with them before I get them pre-qualified. Now, other trainers out there say you're wasting your time when you do that. Your time is precious. But here's what I've found is that even the few people that have credit so poor that they can't get qualified at all, nobody else was willing to meet with them. Nobody else treated them like a human. I sat down, I met with them, and I stay in touch with them for years. Maybe a couple years down the road, they do get things cleaned up and they buy with me. But meanwhile, I've had them send me referrals of their friends because I actually took the time to meet with them. I don't think it's a waste of time to meet with somebody that maybe doesn't qualify. The real reason, though, the primary reason, is when people are out talking to lenders, they say, hey, yeah, we're going to meet with a real estate agent, but he said we need to get pre-qualified first. And so they call up their mom or dad. Mom or dad says, yeah, go talk to our bank or our credit union. Maybe they're good at lending, maybe they're not. The problem is mom or dad's lender has no relationship with you. So when that lender gets you pre-qualified, like, hey, if you don't have an agent yet, I've got a fantastic agent. Because now they're winning bonus points for referring you to their favorite agent. That agent then in turn loves them and sends them more business in turn. So again, when you ask people to go get pre-qualified before you've met with them, you're actively driving them into the arms of your competition. So I have people meet with me first, and then as this stage of the process comes around, I jump back into my role play and I say, so one of the first things I'm going to have you do is get pre-qualified. This does a couple of things for us. It makes us aware of how much you qualify for so that we don't look at homes outside of that range, because that's just an exercise in frustration, right? It wastes your time. It does lead to frustration. And so we get all of that done right away. Not only that, but it tells you how much your payments would be, so that when it comes time to negotiate, we know exactly how this is going to affect us. It makes us stronger negotiators. And maybe we don't want to buy at our max range that we qualify for. because the payments aren't comfortable to us. You know, there is such a thing as being house poor. We qualify for it, but we're on a ramen noodle diet still, right? So having this information up front is very important. So we'll do that right away. And again, I'll connect you with a great lender that is extremely competitive and very responsive. Okay. At this point in the process, the loan process kind of gets put on hold while we go shopping. Now we know how much we can qualify for. We're comfortable with the payment, confident moving forward. So we go shopping and we find our dream home, right? At this point, I then go back and I send a copy to the lender of the purchase contract. You know, we've made an offer, we're under contract. I send a copy to the lender. I send a copy to title company, say, guys, let's start working. So the lender orders some documents from you. He's going to make sure that we qualify with the, you know, maybe he'll get updated pay stubs from you. He's get last year's tax returns. He gets all of this stuff put together. He submits this in to the underwriter. And I only mention this documentation a second time because quite often the underwriter says, hey, we want clarification on a few things. We maybe want a few extra pieces of paper. And they come back to us and say, we need this. We need to get that right away within 24 hours, if not same day, because once we send it back into the underwriter, it may take them a couple of days before it comes back in their queue to review. And we're doing all of this with deadlines that we need to meet. And again, I'm staying on top of them for that, but it's going to be up to you guys when it comes time to get that documentation together. We got to do that quickly. Okay. So now we've got our loan approved. We get an alert saying, hey, we've drawn all the documents. We have now 3 days to review everything. So we'll get a copy of the closing statement. We get to see all of the fees, which there should be no surprises in there. Anything the lender tells you up front should be right there. I get to review the contract numbers. So everything that we negotiated in the contract, I review and make sure they're reflected accurately in the closing papers. Then we go to closing. There's no surprises. There's no drama. We do it, and then it funds and records. Now, there's a little detail in here that a lot of people aren't aware of. Typically, we don't get access to the home after closing. We only get access after it funds and records. That's when it's recorded at the courthouse as your home. That's when you get access to it. People that don't know this, sometimes they schedule their closing on a Friday, and it's the next business day before it actually funds and records. So they're all lined up with all their friends and family in the U-Haul truck to move in over the weekend because of a simple lack of knowledge. And so I schedule these things for Wednesday or Thursday. We get access to the home on Friday. We get the weekend to move in, and things work out really smooth. So even on those little details, it makes a big difference for you. So here's the bottom line. I'm going to save you thousands of dollars in connecting you to the right industry professionals. Okay. On my team, me and my assistant, you've got a full-time team dedicated to helping you find the right home. We're a certified negotiation expert. So as far as negotiating through the terms of the contract, you've got the best. And then I'll be with you throughout the entire process up to closing. So how would you feel about me being your agent? What do you guys think? There's the role play. And that's my closing. How do you feel about me being your agent? Would you hire me? Would anybody in here not hire me? Any thumbs down? Guys, I've had like 99% success with this. And I'm serious, not everybody does. I've had some that say, actually, I've got 3 or 4 agents out there that are looking for homes. If I find one myself, then I'm not going to use anybody. I'm going to do it myself. I don't work with those people. I walk away from them. Okay. But when I take the time to communicate here, here's what happens is most people have worked with agents. And again, this is all in the past, but they've worked with agents that have been out showing them homes, but they've never communicated their value. When you communicate your value like this to somebody, they want to work with you. And so everybody out there should have a buyer presentation like this, where they can communicate their value in a very clear way that removes some of the fear of clients. And you walk out the door with a signed buyer agency agreement in place. And you say, okay, here's our first bit of homework. As I mentioned, we're going to get you qualified with a lender. Do you have a lender already that you're working with? If they say yes, say, great, I would recommend to anybody that they compare at least 2 lenders. So here's my lender's name. Feel free to compare. All right. And they go shopping. 9 times out of 10, they, oh, did I lose you? Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, somewhat.
Okay, give me just a second. Okay, we got you? Looks like my one camera died, so I'm switching to my backup. So again, 9 times out of 10, they'll end up working with my lender because he does do a good job. You know, I mean, I'm not just blowing smoke when I say this guy's competitive and he's responsive and they have a better experience with. So when I've got them with my lender and they're signed with me, then I'm controlling this all the way through the process. And once we get them pre-qualified, you know, I get that letter in hand a couple days later. Now we go out shopping for homes and they're armed with knowledge about how the process works. They know that they're protected so that they're willing to make offers. And when you don't do this, sometimes, like I've shown homes for 6 months to people and they never pulled the trigger. Once I started doing this and I take away their fear of the unknown, they're able to pull the trigger, right? And so quite often we'll do, in fact, most of the time now, it's at most 2 or 3 showings appointments before we're making offers on things, because they know that they're seeing everything out there that they could qualify for. They know how I'm looking out for their best interests. And I've just taken away all of those questions of the unknown, right? The unknown is always scary. All right, any questions for me before we wrap this up today? None? Okay, we'll stop the recording here.